Hello and welcome. For ChinaSolved, I'm Andrew Hubert, and this is the China Negotiator. So you're in a trade war. Episode 28, Scenario Analysis. Scenario analysis is a set of tools and analytics that managers use to set strategy and analyze risk. And it can be very, very complicated. Today, we are going to take a very simplified, shorthand approach to scenario analysis and look at three possible outcomes. So outcome one, just because it's easiest to analyze, is China win, U.S. loss. Scenario two, U.S. win, China loss. Scenario three, and we're just looking at end states here, a China loss and a U.S. loss. And we're not really going to look too much at a China win and a U.S. win because that became impossible about 10 days ago. So let's look at each scenario in a little bit more detail. Scenario number one is China win, USA loss, and I am using the descriptive title of Liberated Markets. In this scenario, a more confident China moves outward. And the reason for that is internally, things are sewn up. The state control has reached levels that we've never seen before anywhere, and they are going heavily digital, which is something we're going to come back to a little bit later. China 2025 is on. Made in China 2025, back on with a vengeance, because China now feels that they're in an existential struggle for survival. OBOR or BRI, One Belt, One Road, or the Belt and Road Initiative, is back on with special emphasis on ASEAN, Southeast Asia. And that is largely because China is asserting new control over the South China Sea. As far as business goes, an unequal playing field in China's domestic market is going to look nicer, but it's going to become more unequal. There are going to be national champions, which are industry leaders that are either, if not owned by the state, are heavily directed by the state. And then there are going to be state-owned enterprises, and that digital scrutiny that is being applied to the citizenry right now is going to be applied to businesses and to visitors and to you going forward, if it isn't already, and it probably is. And we're going back to spheres of influence. We're going to have trade alliances, and China is going to be heavily involved in Africa and heavily involved in Southeast Asia. And at home, Xi Jinping is elevated to Mao-style status, which is a lot. And as far as the impact on international negotiators like yourself, at first it's going to be pretty good. You're not going to notice that much of a change other than the tariffs coming off. And China is going to talk like it's the champion of free trade. And newcomers to China will get that warm, fuzzy feeling when they still believe what the Chinese government tells them. This is going to start to turn sour in about 6 months. Your business is going to start to be disrupted by unfair treatment of the local Chinese partner. Bam! You didn't see that coming. Yeah, Beijing is going to start to exert a lot more control over independent businesses. Actually, they're already doing it. It's just going to start to become a major issue going forward because Beijing is not going to be as worried about countervailing pressure from the West. Beijing is going to have heavy control over independents, especially those with access to international banks and networks, which are the people you're talking to. But in the longer term, it's going to get worse. China is clearly headed for a new and even more glorious level of centralized planning. And you are not part of that central plan. So you're going to be kind of left out in the cold. Okay, let's look at another scenario. U.S. win, China loss. Pax Trumpicanas. China will no longer control strategic supply chains. I don't know how that's going to work, but that's part of a win for the United States. South China Seas is open territory. There will be an end to cyber espionage and an end to national champions and basically an end to China's state industrial policy. As far as business goes, there will be open access to the China market. IP will still be controlled by the owner. And reshoring of industry to the United States seems to be part of the victory package for the United States, although I don't really understand the mechanics of it. The U.S. declares victory, and that's significant because in the past these things would have been quiet and would have been honorable, but we are expecting there to be celebratory marches and statements. And then the United States is very likely to go home and to ignore Asia again. And that's going to have a big impact on international negotiations. If the U.S. wins the trade war, you are going to need a partner to negotiate in China. You are going to need several partners. If you are an American, you are not going to be well liked in the PRC. If there's anything that Trump can consider a win, it's going to be deeply insulting and hurtful to the Chinese. And if you're new to China, this is important. They kind of carry a grudge. Yeah. And if China does have to give up the South China Sea, they will consider that a violation of one of their core priorities. And it's not going to be good. Quality control and regulatory issues will plague your business relations. That was getting better for a while, but now it won't. And gaps in compliance with international agreements are going to accelerate. So there'll be a lot of treaties signed, and a lot of pledges made, but that's not going to help you too much. The third and fairly likely scenario is the lose-lose scenario, where we get the dystopian nightmare that we so richly deserve. And this is how this is going to work. Empty rhetoric continues long after global GDP growth projections are slashed and investor confidence is destroyed. Tariffs are going to become almost meaningless because there'll be so many non-tariff restrictions on cross-border trade that it's just going to dwindle away to nothing. And it's going to be an endless Orwellian nightmare of just casting blame across borders at one another. No one wins. The network of trade alliances within your own country is going to determine your commercial opportunity. And going to places like China or Vietnam will no longer be financially viable. Non-price costs, shipping, customs, tariffs, and bribes are going to just swamp your profits. And cross-border trade becomes an unusual specialty. And what about the win-win? Let's talk about that one as soon as someone gets the other Earth out of storage, because we're going to need those resources and markets and environment. Okay, that was fun. Thanks. Thanks for watching. There's an online course and another one in the works, so contact me if you want information on that. And in the meantime, I wrote a book on conflict management in Chinese business, which has recently been getting popular again, and you should check it out because you will need it. Thanks very much. I will talk to you again soon.